She was handcuffed like a criminal for buying coffee. But when the officer opened her wallet, he found a supreme cordide. And in that moment, the man who thought he had all the power realized he just arrested one of the most powerful women in America. What happens when justice itself is put in cuffs? Watch to the end, because this true story will change the way you see everything. That day, he shouted at me like I was a criminal, as if I were holding a weapon or trying to steal a child. "Madam, step away from the window now." I was holding a cup of decaf in one hand and a wallet in the other, staring into the display at a tiny coffee kiosk inside the Fairfax Mall. The kind of place that still sells biscotti wrapped in cellophane and overpriced caramel swirls. I blinked. Thought maybe he was yelling at someone behind me. But when I turned, he was storming toward me, white cop, maybe 6'3", early 30s, square jaw, and the kind of buzz cut you see in old Marine posters. His name tag read B. Tolman, but the look in his eyes said something else. "You do not belong here. Step away. Hands where I can see them." The mall went quiet. A group of teenagers froze at the pretzel stand. A mother held her child tighter. I saw a security guard lift his phone recording, or maybe calling it in. I raised both hands slowly, still confused. "Officer, is there a problem? You match a suspect's description." He barked. "Female. Black. Mid-50s. Wearing dark clothing. Loitering near the jewelry kiosk." I glanced down at myself. Brown wool coat. Black slacks. Comfortable shoes. No makeup. Hair tucked beneath a knitted beret. I looked like someone's Sunday school teacher, not a thief. "I was buying coffee," I said, calmly, but firmly. "That is not what it looked like. Now." He reached for his cuffs. I froze, not out of fear, but recognition. I had seen this moment before, on newsreels, in bodycam footage, in the eyes of too many mothers and fathers who buried their children for doing nothing at all. "I am not resisting," I said, voice steady, "but I would like to know why I am being detained. I gave you a lawful order. You do not comply. I have every right to arrest you." I looked around. People were watching. No one intervened. Except one. A young man, maybe 19, lifted his phone and started filming. I caught his eye. He gave me a quiet nod. I felt something settle in my chest. Not fear. Not anger. Just the old heaviness. I let the wallet fall from my hand. It landed face up on the tiled floor. The officer did not even glance at it. He reached behind me, snapped the cuffs on with a click too loud for the silence. "You are under arrest for suspicious behavior and failure to comply." He began walking me toward the exit like I was some shoplifting teenager. My wrists stung. My heart did not race. It never did, because I would seen men like him all my life. Outside, the sirens were already waiting. 2 more squad cars. Lights flashing like Christmas in hell. A female officer tried to meet my gaze as she took the paperwork, but I could see the awkward regret in her eyes. She did not want this call. At the squad car door, I turned to him. "Officer Tolman," I said, "you are making a mistake." He smirked. "Oh yeah, "What are you? A lawyer or something?" I met his eyes, unblinking. "No, I am a justice." He laughed, a big, arrogant laugh that filled the parking lot. "Sure you are, lady. And I am the president." He shoved me inside and slammed the door. The young man with the phone had followed us all the way out. He did not say a word, but I saw him zoom in on the badge. I saw him pan toward my face. He knew, and I knew, deep down this was not just about me. This was about every woman who looked like me, every child who would grow into skin like mine. And this was just the beginning. I was not born into robes and marble pillars. I was born in a one-story house with chipped paint and a leaky roof, just outside Richmond, Virginia. My name is Ruth Elkins. I am 52. I have 2 sons, 1 husband, and a lifetime's worth of quiet battles behind my smile. I am a mother, a wife, a daughter of the South, and, yes, I sit on the bench of the highest court in this country. But none of that mattered when Officer Brent Tallman looked at me. He did not see credentials. He did not see the years of sacrifice, of long nights reading cases under flickering dorm lights, of walking to class in the rain because the car broke down again. He did not see the woman who argued before the Doc C. Circuit in heels 2 sizes too small because I could not afford new ones. No, he saw a black woman standing alone at a mall kiosk. That was enough. That morning, my husband had woken up with one of those headaches, the kind that coils behind the eyes and lingers. He has been battling lymphoma for 6 years, the kind of battle that leaves scars on both your body and your spirit. I told him I would run errands, groceries, prescriptions, and his favorite, that cinnamon hazelnut roast from Gloria Bean's Cafe in the mall. Done to wait in line for it. He said, half asleep, "It is just coffee." But he did not understand. When the days are hard, the small things are everything. I got dressed like I always do, low profile, practical, invisible. That is what black women learn. Blend in, don T, draw attention. Don T, provoke. Just move through the world quietly and survive it. I parked in the south lot of Fairfax Mall, slid on my gloves, and headed in. I did not expect to feel watched, but I did. It started at the entrance. A sales clerk looked up as I passed, then immediately lowered her voice and moved behind the counter. I have seen it too many times to mistake it for coincidence. By the time I reached the kiosk, my heart was already guarded. I stood near the glass display, debating between a drip roast and the caramel swirl my husband used to love. And that is when he came. Brent Tallman, Fairfax County Police. White, stocky, jaw so tight it looked like he gritted his teeth in his sleep. He looked at me like I would walked into his living room and tracked mud on the floor. And then he made a decision, not based on my actions, not based on evidence, just based on what he thought I looked like. "You fit the description," he said. What description? Black, female, alone. That was all it took, even after I asked calmly for clarity, even after I complied, even when the wallet lay right there on the floor with my government, it sticking out slightly. He did not see a citizen. He did not see a judge. He did not see a woman who dedicated her life to the Constitution. He saw a threat, And I felt shame I had not felt since I was 14 years old, and a white neighbor called me a maid's daughter while I was out back reading a book. I felt rage too, but I swallowed it, because rage gets women like me killed. So I played the part, the respectable detainee, the quiet one, the good one. But inside, I was counting seconds, counting breaths, counting how long it would take before he realized what he would done. Because it was not just the arrest, it was the humiliation, the way people stared but said nothing, the way the security guard looked down at his clipboard, pretending he did not hear, the way the female officer, young, maybe early 20s, refused to meet my eye until she whispered, "Sorry, madame," under her breath when she placed me in the back of the cruiser. I wanted to scream, not for me, but for every black woman who has ever been handcuffed for not belonging, for shopping while black, for driving while black, for living while black. Do they know how much effort we put in just to appear safe? The soft voice, the smile, the hands visible at all times, the calculated pauses. It is exhausting. I am Ruth Elkins, appointed by President Harrison in 2017, confirmed by a Senate vote of 64-36. I have ruled on constitutional law, civil rights, and criminal justice. I have shaped the legal conversation of a generation. But on that day, none of it mattered. I was just another black woman with a wallet and a cup of coffee. And to Brent Tallman, that was enough. But he would learn. Soon. He would learn exactly who I was. And the world would watch. Brent Tallman liked the way his badge felt when it was clipped onto his uniform like armor. Not just against danger, but against doubt. Against questions. Against anything that threatened the perfect story he told himself every morning in the mirror. He was 38 years old, divorced, no kids, and had a spotless record with Fairfax County PD. His fellow officers described him as direct. His superiors called him efficient. He called himself a protector, but only for the people he thought were worth protecting. To the others, the people who did not look like him, talk like him, vote like him, they were suspects. Potential threats. He never said it out loud. Didn't he need to? His actions spoke louder than any slur. Brent grew up in Loudoun County, in a white neighborhood where a black kid on a skateboard meant a call to mom. His father was a retired cop, the kind who believed that some people just do not belong in certain places. Brent never questioned it. When his dad barked, "Don't you ever let one of them disrespect you?" Boy, Brent absorbed it like scripture. So by the time he was in uniform himself, he already had a filter on the world, a filter that saw danger in melanin and obedience in silence. That morning, Brent was not even supposed to be at the mall. It was a slow shift. His usual beat was traffic enforcement on Route 123. But a call came in about suspicious behavior at Fairfax Mall, a vague report. Probably nothing. He rolled his eyes, grumbled about people being dramatic, but he responded, because deep down, Brent liked confrontation. He liked being the one with authority. So when he spotted a woman middle age, black, standing near the jewelry display at Gloria Bean's cafe, his mind filled in the blanks. She did not look panicked. She was not trying to run. She was just there, calm, watching. And to Brent, calm could be defiance. "She is not moving," he told dispatch. "Matches the description. I am going in." He approached her with the weight of preloaded suspicion. She did not cower. She did not panic. She did not raise her voice. Instead, she spoke like someone who expected to be heard. That irritated him. The good ones, the ones who knew their place, would tremble. Say yes, sir. Apologize even when innocent. That was order. That was safety. But this woman, she looked at him like he was the mistake. He asked for Ed. She hesitated. That was enough. He slapped on the cuffs before she could blink. The wallet dropped to the floor. He did not bother looking inside. Didn't he need to? She fit the mold. He did not notice the young man filming. Didn't he see the glances from the coffee shop barista? Didn't he hear the whispers? Isn't he that? Wait, is that Justice Elkins? She was on 10 last month. None of it registered. Because Brent was not listening. Brent was performing. To him, this was another notch on the duty belt. Another moment where he could say he prevented a situation. He put her in the cruiser with the same smug certainty he carried into every complaint filed against him. The same certainty that had gotten 3 cases dismissed. The same certainty that let him push a young boy against a locker last summer and call it crowd control. What Brent did not know, and what would shatter the illusion he built around himself, was that this was not just any woman. This was Justice Ruth Elkins, one of the most respected legal minds of the last 2 decades. A sitting Supreme Court justice with a civil rights record had reshaped state laws across the country. And in the next few hours, his name would be trending for all the wrong reasons. The footage would surface. The press would call. His captain would demand answers. And Brent, for the first time in his career, would be forced to see what everyone else already saw. He was not a hero. He was a symbol of everything broken in a system that protected him too long. But for now, he smiled as he drove away. Satisfied. Ignorant. Doomed. The room they brought me to was not even an interrogation room. It was one of those cold, gray back offices they use when they do not want to leave a paper trail. No mirror, no camera, just a table with uneven legs and a humming fluorescent light that flickered like it could not decide whether it belonged in a police station or a rundown gas station. Officer Tolman did not say a word when he shoved the chair back for me to sit. He did not need to. His silence was its own language, a language of assumption. Prejudice so baked into every move he made that even the pauses were accusatory. A younger officer stood by the door, arms folded. Hispanic, maybe mid-20s. Clearly uncomfortable. I caught the look in his eyes, a glimmer of recognition, like he knew who I was, but was not sure if he should say anything, or if he even had the power to. "I am going to ask you some questions," Tolman finally said, slapping a manila folder down like it carried the weight of the law. "And I suggest you cooperate. Am I under arrest?" I asked, calm. "You are being detained for suspicion of theft." He said, "You match the description." I breathed slowly through my nose. "What description?" Black female. Mid-50s. Loitering near the jewelry counter. Brown coat. dark pants. Do you know how many women in this mall match that description? I asked, or is the real matching detail that I am black and alone? Tolman's jaw tightened. Madame, I am not here to debate race. No, I said, holding his gaze. You are here to perform authority, and to remind me where you think I belong. He leaned in, both hands on the table. I do not care if you are the Queen of England. You do not get to talk to me like that. I let that line sit, because I knew something he did not. And I was not the Queen of England. I was something far more American than royalty. I was a woman who de-earned her place at the table, where laws are written and rewritten. I was a mother, a wife, a jurist, and in that moment, I was the quiet storm gathering behind the badge he used like a weapon. Search my wallet, I said. He did not move. Go ahead. It is in your evidence tray. Still, he stood there, staring, like he knew if he opened it, his entire world might crack in two. Instead, he pulled out a printed form, one of those generic mall incident reports. The manager of the jewelry kiosk said you were lingering for a long time. I was choosing coffee. My husband is sick. He has cancer. I came here because this is the only place that sells the roast he can still stomach. Tolman did not flinch. That is not what the witness said. Who? The woman who would not look me in the eye when I asked for help, or the man who stood 3 feet away while I got handcuffed and did nothing. He did not answer. The young officer by the door shifted. He was sweating now. His eyes kept darting between me and the folder. Finally, he spoke. Voice low. Officer Tolman, sir. I think we might need to run a second check on her head. Tolman whipped around. I told you. I have got this. No. I really think you should look at it. There was a pause, then a slow turn. Tolman walked over to the tray, pulled out the slim leather wallet, and flipped it open with one hand. He froze. It was subtle, maybe imperceptible to anyone who had not spent a lifetime reading body language. But I saw it. The way his breath hitched. The way his shoulders locked. The way the blood drained from his smug, righteous face. He turned it so I could see what he saw. The gold-embossed lettering. The Department of Justice seal. The words, United States Supreme Court identification. And below that, Justice Ruth M. Elkins. Associate Justice. Confirmed, July 2017. He blinked. Twice, mouth half open. The younger officer took a step back. Sir, she is a sitting Supreme Court justice. For the first time, Officer Tolman looked directly at me. Really looked, as if he were only now realizing I had a name, a history, a voice, and that voice mattered more than his badge. He stammered, Madam, I did not. You did not what? Officer, I asked softly. You did not check before humiliating me in public. You did not think a black woman in a brown coat could be more than a suspect. You did not imagine that power might wear a face that does not resemble yours. His lips moved, but no words came out. The room went silent. And I did not gloat. I did not yell, because the story was not over. He had made his choice hours ago. But mine was just beginning. The silence in that room was thicker than concrete. For a moment, the only sound was the low, guilty hum of the fluorescent light above us. Officer Tolman was frozen, still holding my Supreme Court, like it might combust in his hands if he blinked. The younger officer stood to the side, his arms no longer crossed, his mouth parted in shock, eyes darting between the two of us like he had just watched someone step off the history book page and into real life. I slowly reached forward, picked up the ed from Tolman's trembling fingers, and placed it back into my wallet with the kind of dignity that cannot be taken, only recognized. I stood up. Let me be clear. Officer Tolman, I said, voice low but firm. I work in Deeks, too. He opened his mouth to speak, but all that came out was breath thick. Embarrassed. Panicked breath. I leaned in slightly, just enough that he could feel the weight of every word I had earned with blood, sweat, and the Constitution. I have written majority opinions that shape this country. I have stood across the bench from the Solicitor General. I have met 3 presidents in my lifetime and argued against 2, and here you are pulling me out of a mall cafe like I am a shoplifter. Because I fit a description. He lowered his gaze, but I was not finished. You did not even ask my name. You did not ask for a receipt. You did not verify anything. You saw a black woman alone, and that was enough. I turned to the younger officer. What is your name? He straightened. Officer Santiago. Madam. Thank you. Officer Santiago, I said, for speaking up. I hope you continue to do that, even when it is uncomfortable. He nodded. I saw something flicker in his eyes, maybe guilt. Maybe hope. Tolman finally found his voice. I did not know. Madam, you have to understand. No. I interrupted, my voice sharp now. You have to understand. That is the problem. You think justice comes in a uniform and a sidearm, but real justice is silent, steady, and earned through service, not swagger. I turned back to the table, grabbed my gloves, and walked toward the door. The hallway outside was dimly lit and lifeless. I could hear murmurs behind the frosted glass of the admin offices. Someone had seen the Ide. Word was already spreading. By the time I reached the station lobby, 2 detectives stood waiting. One older, one younger, both clearly alerted by the ripple effect that a Supreme Court justice being wrongfully arrested tends to cause. Justice Elkins, the older one said with a tight nod. We were just reviewing the incident. Would you allow us the opportunity to? No. Thank you, I said, without slowing my step. You will be hearing from my office. He cleared his throat, trying to save face. Understood, Madam. Outside, the day was gray and cold. A light drizzle fell from the clouds, like the sky could not decide whether it wanted to cry or just watch. I pulled my coat tighter around me and made my way across the lot. As I reached my car, a voice called out behind me. Justice Elkins. I turned. It was the young man who had recorded everything at the mall. He jogged over, phone still in hand, out of breath, nervous. I uploaded the video. He said, They already started sharing it. People are mad. Really mad. I nodded. What is your name, son? Jamal. Jamal Reed. Well, Jamal, I said, placing a hand on his shoulder. Thank you. What you did took courage. He swallowed hard. I thought people should see. You did not deserve that. No one does. I said, but you made sure it did not stay hidden. That matters. He smiled faintly. I got a sister. She is 14. I do not want her growing up thinking this is normal. It does not have to be. I said, not if we tell the truth. He nodded and walked away. Shoulders a little straighter than before. I sat in my car, took a long breath, and finally let myself feel it everything. The rage. The humiliation. The fear. The restraint. But above all, the resolve. Because this was not just about Officer Tolman. It was not about one mall or one mistake. It was about all the names we never hear, all the hands cuffed too quickly, all the warnings ignored until someone with a title stands in the way. And I had a title. Now, I was going to use it. I looked at my phone. 100 missed messages. My clerk. My husband, Ken, and prayer. The country was already waking up. And they were going to hear everything. The headlines broke before I even reached my driveway. Black one wrongfully arrested at Fairfax Mall turns out to be sitting Supreme Court Justice. Justice Ruth Elkins racially profiled by local police, entire arrest, caught on camera. Supreme mistake. Cop detains nation's highest-ranking black female jurist. The weight of those words rippled through the nation like a shockwave. But to me, they were just punctuation marks in a story that started long before anyone knew my name. I parked in front of my modest red-brick home in Alexandria, a quiet neighborhood with maple trees lining the sidewalks and wind chimes that never stopped singing. The same house I have lived in for 28 years. The same porch swing where I read To Kill a Mockingbird to my boys until they were too old to sit still. Inside, my husband lay under a fleece blanket on the couch, chemo bag beside him, eyes on the TV. He did not say a word when I walked in. He did not have to. The footage was already playing. There I was, on screen, in cuffs, surrounded, silent. His eyes did not flinch, but his hand reached out, fingers cold from the Eve line, and found mine. I sat beside him. We watched it together, and for a moment, I was not Justice Elkins. I was Ruth, the woman who spent decades proving she was more than the girl from Nunth and Fulton. The woman who spent years navigating rooms where no one looked like her and no one expected her to speak. They did not know the journey. So let me tell you, I was born in 1972. Richmond, Virginia. My father was a janitor at the courthouse. He wore a gray uniform and carried his dignity in the way he whistled every morning. My mother cleaned homes and prayed in whispers. They had dreams for me they could not name. All they asked was that I sit up straight, listen closely, and never forget who I was. I graduated high school at 16, Howard University at 20, Harvard Law at 23. The first time I entered a courtroom, they mistook me for the defendant. I did not correct them. I let my opening statement do it for me. I defended tenants. protesters, single mothers. I wrote amicus briefs for civil rights cases before I was 30. I taught law before I turned 35. I served on the Dock C Circuit, where I authored decisions that held the line on voting rights and police reform. I was called radical, dangerous, ungrateful. And then came the call from the White House. President Harrison, in 2017, he wanted a justice who did not just believe in the law, but one who lived under its failures and still found the courage to serve it. When the Senate confirmation hearings began, I was grilled for 13 hours, not on my jurisprudence, not on my record, but on my tone, my attitude, my understanding of law enforcement. One senator asked if I could be fair to white people. Another called me passionate, but perhaps emotional. But I made it. 50 Democrats, 14 Republicans. I became the third black person and the first black woman ever confirmed to the Supreme Court. And still I was arrested in a shopping mall for loitering. The irony was not lost on me. The country had trusted me to interpret the Constitution, but a local cop did not trust me to buy coffee. That night, I sat in my home office with the lights off, watching the world rage on a screen. Celebrities tweeted. Journalists knocked. Law students emailed. Someone even called it a Rosa Parks moment. But I did not want to be a symbol. I wanted accountability. I drafted a letter to the Doge. I called the Chief Justice. I arranged a press conference. But deeper than all that, I did something else. I pulled out a yellowed photograph. It showed a 12-year-old girl standing on the steps of a courthouse in Richmond. Her father's janitor badge clipped to her collar, pretending it was a judge's robe. She looked fierce in the way only girls who've been told no to often can be. I stared at her, and I promised her, they may not see you today, but they will. Tomorrow, I would speak. Not just as a justice, not just as a victim, but as a witness to a truth this country still tries to bury, that the robe does not erase the skin, and the badge does not excuse the bias, but the truth, when spoken boldly, can still change everything. The press conference was not held on Capitol Hill. It was not inside a marble courtroom, or beneath the chandeliered ceilings of the Supreme Court. It was on the concrete steps of the Fairfax County Courthouse, because justice, when it is real, does not trickle down from above. It rises from the very places where it is most often denied. They asked if I wanted a podium inside. I said no. I wanted the people to see it, to feel it. I wanted them to look at the same parking lot where I had been handcuffed and walked like a thief. I wanted them to remember that injustice does not wear black robes or white gloves. It wears silence. By the time I arrived, the crowd had swelled past the barriers. People of every color, every age. Black mothers with strollers, white veterans with flags, teenagers in hoodies holding cardboard signs that said I am Ruth too. The air was thick with something we do not feel often enough in this country. Readiness. I stepped to the microphone. My face was calm, but my voice carried the weight of 1,000 unheard stories. My name is Ruth Elkins. I began, and I serve as an Associate Justice on the United States Supreme Court. But I am not here today as a jurist. I am here as a citizen. as a black woman, as a human being. The silence was absolute. 3 days ago, I was handcuffed at Fairfax Mall. I was accused of theft, without a single shred of evidence, without even the courtesy of a question. I was not read my rights. I was not offered dignity. I was offered judgment. I paused. My name did not matter. My title did not matter. What mattered, what always matters to men like Officer Brent Tallman, is what they think they see when they look at people like me. There was a ripple in the crowd. Some gasped, some held hands, some shook with fury. But this is not just about me, I said, because I am not the first, and if we stay silent, I will not be the last. Cameras clicked. Reporters scribbled, but I was not speaking to them. I was speaking to every child who had ever been followed through a store. Every father stopped for a broken taillight who never made it home. Every woman made to feel invisible unless she was in chains. Then I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the handcuffs they had used on me. I kept these, I said, holding them high, not because they define me, but because they remind me of what still happens, of what we still allow. I turned to the young man who had filmed the arrest Jamal. I would invited him here today, and now he stood beside me, awkward but brave, his phone in one hand and his younger sister's hand in the other. This young man had more courage than a department full of badges, I said, because he told the truth. Jamal's eyes watered, but he did not flinch. Neither did his sister. And to every officer watching this, every city official, every judge, every school teacher, every mall manager, I have a message. We are not going back. We are not bowing. We are not waiting for you to change. We are demanding it. The crowd roared not with chaos, but with clarity. I looked out at the sea of faces and saw something I had not felt in years. Belief, not in me, but in what we could be. When I stepped down from that makeshift podium, reporters swarmed. They shouted questions. Will you sue? Will Officer Tallman be fired? What does this mean for the court? But I did not stop to answer, because I had already decided. This was not about revenge. It was about repair. It was about rewriting a narrative that has been weaponized against us for centuries. I had no interest in punishment. I wanted transformation. That night, I went on national television, not as a victim, not as a symbol, but as a witness. And when the anchor leaned forward and asked me, "Justice Elkins, what do you want from all this?" I did not hesitate. I want Officer Brent Tallman to look my sons in the eye, I said, and explain to them why their mother, a Supreme Court justice, still was not enough to be seen as human. Silence fell across the studio, because there is no answer for that. Only change. The first crack did not come from outside. It came from within. 3 days after my press conference, a whistleblower in the Fairfax Police Department sent an anonymous email to every major news outlet on the East Coast. Attached were internal memos, incident reports, and a complaint log that had been sealed under the label non-actionable. At the center of it all, Officer Brent Tallman. 17 civilian complaints, 9 excessive force allegations, 3 unresolved misconduct investigations, all quietly buried. One of the documents included a bodycam freeze frame from the summer before, Teenage boy pinned to the ground during a traffic stop, his nose bleeding, his voice muffled. The caption read, "Tolman cleared of wrongdoing. Use of force deemed in policy." That photo ran on the front page of every newspaper the next morning, not beside mine, but under it, because this was not about a single arrest anymore. It was a pattern, a blueprint of discrimination etched into protocols, protected by silence. And the silence was finally breaking. At first, the department tried to contain it. The police chief issued a short statement. "We are reviewing all matters related to Officer Tolman and will cooperate fully with any investigation." But the community was not waiting anymore. Parents to the courthouse with signs that read, "Justice doesn't wear cuffs." Teachers walked out of schools in protest. Clergy held midnight vigils for unnamed victims of racial profiling. It was not just Fairfax, it was D.C., Richmond, Baltimore, Charlotte. A tide had turned. And in the middle of it, Brent Tolman disappeared from public view. For 2 weeks, no one saw him. He did not report to duty. Didn't he return calls? His house was dark. The department listed him as on administrative leave. But the truth, like always, was deeper. He was hiding. Because the world he knew, where authority was a shield and uniform a crown, was collapsing. Then came the hearing. The city council called a special session, not just about me, but about every unfiled complaint, every covered-up tape, every he resisted that turned out to be a lie. I sat in the front row, dressed in black, not as a justice, not as a plaintiff, but as a citizen, one of many. Behind me sat mothers holding framed photos. One had lost a son. Another held a daughter's purse, her only belonging, not taken as evidence. When Brent entered the chamber, escorted by 2 internal affairs officers, the room went still. His hair was longer. His face, pale. He did not meet anyone's eyes. He took the stand. At first, he tried to posture, tried to lean into that tired old defense. "I was just doing my job." But something cracked. Maybe it was the crowd of silent faces. Maybe it was the footage playing on the screens behind him, clips from his career. Unedited, unfiltered. Maybe it was seeing me. Sitting there, not with vengeance but with patience. Because there is nothing more terrifying to a guilty man than the eyes of the people he thought he would never have to answer to. I did not mean to." He stammered, but no one cared about what he meant. They cared about what he did, and what he did repeatedly was violate the public trust. The city council voted unanimously to terminate his employment. But that was not the story. The story was that the blue wall cracked, and no one stepped forward to patch it. His partner did not defend him. His captain did not plead for leniency. Even the union, known for circling the wagons, issued a rare statement. "There is no place in our ranks for those who dishonor the badge." When the vote passed, Brent stood, trembling, his hands empty. No badge, no gun, no applause. And as he walked out, the sound that followed him was not outrage, it was silence. The kind of silence that comes not from absence, but from awareness. From the moment people realize, we let this happen for too long. I did not smile. I did not gloat. Because this was not victory. This was reckoning. Outside, the press swarmed. I walked past them without a word. I was not interested in sound bites. I was interested in legacy. And that legacy was just beginning. Because real justice does not end with punishment. It begins with accountability. They called it Ruth's Law. I never asked them to. I never wanted my name etched into legislation, not for vanity, not for vengeance. But when the first draft came across my desk, when I saw those words typed in bold at the top of the federal proposal, Ruth's Law, National Standards for Civilian Detainment and Police Accountability, I knew it was not about me anymore. It was about the moment, the movement, and the people we would failed for far too long. Congress rarely moves quickly, but the country had changed. The video of my arrest had ignited something raw. Local legislatures were flooded with emails. Petitions crossed 2 million signatures. Clergy and veterans and teachers and teenagers all stood shoulder to shoulder, demanding something new, not just outrage, but reform. The bill was introduced by Senator Alicia Garner of Georgia, a black woman whose own father had been roughed up during a traffic stop when she was 9. She stood on the floor of the Senate and told that story. Voice shaking, hands steady. "We cannot legislate empathy," she said, "but we can demand transparency. We can require accountability. We can protect the next little girl from having to watch her hero broken on the side of the road." Ruth's Law proposed a simple but seismic change. Mandatory body cams for all on-duty officers, with public access protocols. Federal funding tied directly to racial bias training and community oversight. A national database tracking misconduct, closing the loopholes between states. And, most significantly, a civilian's right to know, which guaranteed that any detained individual must be told their legal status, charge, and right to record the encounter, no exceptions. The debates were fiery. Cable news lit up. One side accused us of tying the hands of law enforcement. The other asked why those hands had been free to choke, to shove, to cuff without cause. I was invited to speak before the Judiciary Committee. When I arrived this time, not in cuffs, but in my robes, they stood. Not all of them, but enough. I told them about Fairfax, about the cold room, about the cuffs that clicked without evidence, about the boy with the phone and the voice I nearly lost. I did not cry. I did not raise my voice. I let the truth carry its own thunder. And when I finished, I said, "If this happened to me, with all my titles and visibility, what do you think is happening to the names you will never read? The ones with no podium, no cameras, no justice." A pause. Then applause. 2 weeks later, Ruth's Law passed in the Senate 63 to 37. The House followed swiftly. The President signed it with my husband beside me, our sons on either side, and Jamal, yes, that Jamal holding a ceremonial pen in his hand. The first teenager ever invited to witness a bill signing from inside the West Wing. He did not say much, just stood tall, silent, and proud. And when reporters asked what he wanted to do when he grew up, he smiled and said, "Lawyer, I think, or maybe journalist. Whatever lets me keep telling the truth." That moment, more than any, brought me to tears, because we had shifted something not just in policy, but in possibility. Suddenly, Schools wanted to teach about Ruth's Law in government class. Churches printed its story in their bulletins. And across the country, black parents looked into their children's eyes and said, with hope not hesitation, "You could be her one day." But I did not want to be the end of a journey. I wanted to be the bridge, because justice should not be a miracle. It should be expected. That is what Ruth's Law meant. Not a finish line, but a new beginning. And the girl in that photo, the one with her father's janitor badge clipped to her collar, she finally smiled. Because the house she once cleaned now bore her name. The air outside Gloria Bean's cafe smelled the same as it did that day: roasted cinnamon, warm vanilla, and that faint sterile note of waxed mall floors. The same sound of kids laughing near the arcade. The same old man reading a paperback near the shoe store. The same morning buzz of a place that knew everything changed and nothing changed at all. But this time, I was not here for a press conference, or a lawsuit, or a political statement. I was here for coffee. The coffee I never got to buy. I walked past the spot where it happened, where Brent Tolman barked at me, where a cup of Daff nearly cost me my dignity. Now there was a plaque bolted discreetly into the floor tiles, in honor of Justice Ruth Elkins. A reminder that justice must live everywhere, especially here. The woman at the counter looked up as I approached and smiled so brightly, it almost startled me. She was no older than 20, red curls tucked under a baseball cap. No fear in her eyes, just recognition. "Oh my God," she whispered. "You are. It is you, is not it?" I smiled gently. "I suppose it is. I read your book, blind but not silent. My mother made me watch your Senate hearing. I cried when they passed the law." Her voice cracked. She blinked fast, like tears were trying to find a way out before she would even finish the sentence. "What can I get you today?" she asked. I looked at the board, then back at her. Medium cinnamon hazelnut roast. No cream. Just black. She grinned, coming right up. As I waited, I took in the mall. It was quieter now, mid-morning on a weekday. But something was different. Security officers nodded as they passed me, not stiff and wary, but respectful. The barista handed me the cup with 2 hands, like it was sacred. Just as I turned to leave, a voice called from behind. "Justice Elkins." I turned. A little black boy stood there, maybe 10 years old, holding his mother's hand. He had on a navy blue blazer, clip-on tie crooked, and sneakers that lit up at the soles. His eyes were wide, not afraid, not confused, just amazed. "Yes," I said. Crouching to his height, his mother smiled, barely holding back her tears. "My son, he did a report on you for school, said you were his hero." The boy nodded hard. I said you were like Batman, but with a book instead of a cape. I laughed, truly laughed, and it felt like a window had opened inside me. I handed him the cup. "This was supposed to be for someone I love," I said softly. "But I think he would want you to have it." The boy took it, confused. "But it is coffee. One day," I whispered, "this country will call you Your Honor too. And when that happens, you will remember the first time someone handed you something that mattered." His eyes gleamed. His mother wiped hers. And for a moment, I saw the future not imagined, not hoped for, but real. A world where that boy did not have to memorize survival scripts, where his worth was not questioned in department stores, where justice did not wear a disguise, but a face like his. I stepped outside. The sun had broken through the clouds, casting golden light on everything. Kids rode scooters through the courtyard. A couple held hands beneath the awning. Life, simple and steady, went on. I pulled my coat tight, not from cold, but from reverence. I looked back at the cafe one last time. The cup was gone from my hand, but not the message, because in this life, we do not always get the justice we expect. But sometimes when the moment is right, when the silence is broken, when one voice is brave enough to speak, we get the justice we deserve. And I was no longer just Ruth from Richmond. I was Justice Elkins. And I was exactly where I belonged. In the end, racist cop arrests black woman at mall, then she shows Supreme Court, was not just a story about an arrest. It was a story about visibility, about the dangerous assumptions we carry, about what happens when someone with power forgets that dignity does not come from a uniform, and identity cannot be judged by skin. Justice Ruth Elkins reminded us all that titles do not protect you from prejudice, and yet, dignity can never be taken by those who fail to see it. She did not fight back with rage. She fought back with truth, with presence, with legacy, because the greatest power is not the one you wear, it is the one you walk with. And that little boy in the mall, he was not handed coffee. He was handed possibility, a reminder that the future of justice does not live in courtrooms. It lives in classrooms, in sidewalks, in small acts of courage. It lives in you. So if this story moved you, made you reflect, made you feel seen, subscribe to this channel for more powerful true stories that deserve to be heard. Comment below. What part of this story hit you the hardest? Share this video with someone who needs to remember that courage does not always roar. Sometimes it stands still. Sometimes it waits in line for coffee. And sometimes it wears a black coat and holds the law in her hands. Because justice does not belong to the powerful. It belongs to the persistent.